Today, I'm going to give you 2 years of solutions in just 9 minutes. I'm going to go over all the major problems I face putting a roots blower on my 350 small block Chevy with the sniper system. But all of these issues stand alone. So even if you don't have a roots blower, this still applies to you. Because I can say with certainty, I know that you are having some of these same issues. Problems that won't quite go away, don't make a lot of sense, and you're ripping your hair out, losing sleep over. I get it. I went through the challenges and the frustrations. So I'm making this video so I can help you avoid them. By the end of this video, you'll be able to solve those problems and hopefully avoid some others. And be able to walk away with the confidence to dive into your next project. There's a lot going on here, so lock in, let's get to it. All right, I'm gonna try and break these down by problem and then solution. So let's start right here with the supercharger. So the first problem is, how do I run accessories and a water pump to be compatible with this whole setup? Well, first thing is you need to make sure you're running a short nose water pump with the dual pattern water pump pulley. So that way you can have your water pump pulley feeding both of your accessories, which both of those guys are fed from this pulley right here. This is a 2V accessory drive coming off of the crank. Next problem is my accessories don't line up. What can I do? Well, if you're trying to run anything factory for your accessories or alternating power steering, you can forget it. You're gonna need to run a new bracketry for both of these accessories in order for them to work. I ended up moving my alternator over here to this side, and it works a little better for my setup, but I have seen people run it over there on that side too. We really need to spend the time and make sure these things are lined up, otherwise we'll start throwing belts, and that's just a bad day. Next problem is my pulleys don't line up for my blower. What do I do? We can get spacers like this that sit behind either the upper or the lower pulleys for your supercharger drive. And those can move the pulleys out as much as you need, but don't forget, you also need to space out your water pump pulley. Now, how do I even mount this thing to that engine? What intake do I use? Is it even available? Yes, it is. This is one from Speedmaster. There's a couple different ones you can get. You can buy a genuine Y-end one or used, or you can get one of these from the Ching Chong, China. And you know what? It works fine, except for one thing. This manifold really went on okay, except for this issue back here. I'm sure you can see it right there. I have a little puddle of oil. And that's because I'll show you here on this front bolt. What happened was back there's a coolant boss sitting real close to the head of that bolt, and I had to do some clearancing. And what happened was, honestly, I went a little too far. And I got into the bolt hole. So now I need to make sure I run some more RTV on that bolt so that way I can close up that hole, because right now it's definitely leaking. Otherwise, that manifold is just fine. You just got to make sure you check on that one thing. All right, now how in the world do I tell the ECU, or maybe even you're feeding carburetors, how do I tell them how much boost pressure this supercharger is making? Well, in the back of the manifold, there's a little port where I have one of these 1/8 MPT push locks going, that guy right there. And I have that feeding this vacuum or boost block, so that way everything on here can read either vacuum or boost, including the fuel pressure regulator, which you need to do as well. One more problem is, how do I shield my transmission from all the boost? Well, that funky little thing there in the middle is from TransGo, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Once your supercharger is making boost and it's feeding that boost block, that little valve will let all the extra pressure out, so that way your transmission doesn't get any damage from seeing that boost pressure instead of vacuum like it's supposed to. And speaking of computers, let's go ahead and get into the Holley 2x4 Super Sniper system here. When you're using any ECU to control your engine, the sensor data is extremely important. Now, unfortunately, the Holley systems come either set up wrong or need adjustment right out of the box. They're not quite ready to bolt on and go. Let's go over a few of those things you need to change and a few problems you can avoid. So the first thing I want to start with is the one that actually shut me down for about 60 days. And actually is the reason why my ECU, that silver shiny plate there, had to be sent off for repair, and that's also the reason why it doesn't match, because apparently they don't make this gold color anymore. So down here is the king of probably all the sensors on any ECU, is the oxygen sensor, and we want to make sure we keep this one safe. Because on a Holley Sniper specifically, if that cable going to the O2 sensor gets damaged on the harness side coming from the ECU, the whole harness is trashed. And then you got to send it off, might be 45 to 60 days, and who knows, it might not even match the right color. So that big heat sleeve right there is actually the harness side of the sniper system. So what I did was I covered that in heat sleeve and make sure I zip tied it up in about 15 different places so it never falls again. And it's very common for those things to fall, catch the header, melt, and then you're done. How do I run my linkage? Well, of course, I have the one bar here connecting the two, and this is actually a bracket from Amazon. I think it was like $5 or $8, but I actually use this stock cable. A lot of people have asked me questions about that, on which, how do I route my linkage, what cable am I using, and of course with the blower, the fact that this moves confuses a lot of people. It's okay, guys. If you're trying to figure out how to run a, this is like an imitation bug catcher with either a carburetor or a Super Sniper setup like this, all you need is one of these bug catcher scoops and one of these linkages, and you're good to go. Now, if you got one of these out of the box and you did nothing to it, I'm telling you right now, it's set up wrong. This thing right here is the throttle position sensor, and that comes from the factory out of spec. I don't know why, but what we need to do is loosen those two little bolts and rotate it so it's in the middle of the travel, just like mine is set up here. So that way you can not have a TPS setting that's wrong every single time. And the second thing coming over here to this side is you might have a high idle issue, and that's this guy right here. This is your secondary plate throttle return spring. What you need to do is give that one more wind, so that way it keeps those plates shut under high vacuum, which is what the snipers or carburetors will see, and it might be sucking that plate open and actually messing up your idle. So you got to make sure you do those two things. Another big one is the coolant temperature sensor, and you see I'm on this side of the engine for a reason, because there's only one place your coolant temperature sensor needs to go, and that is right there on the actual cylinder head in between cylinders number 1 and 3. And you'll see I have here another fiberglass little boot protecting the sensor and the plug, because I've had those plugs get damaged before and they're pretty easy to replace. And I have mine in that fiberglass sleeve, coming following my spark plug wires up and around to my ECU. One other sensor I can't really show you because it's way back behind the engine is the oil pressure sensor that actually doesn't come with the Holley Super Sniper, or any sniper actually. You have to add it. And I think that was a pretty big oversight by Holley. Not too sure why they ran it that way. But if there's any one sensor you need, aside from maybe your O2 sensor, it's the oil pressure sensor. Because no oil pressure, no engine. So you got to make sure to add one of those. I actually added a fuel pressure sensor that I'm going to show you, and it's the same exact setup that you can use to add the oil pressure sensor. Check it out. So this here's my fuel pressure sensor. Fuel comes in from the regulator through this hose, and that's where I read and send pressure information to the ECU. So what you'll see there is a 1/8 opening, and then they have an adapter. So then I can use a regular, readily available GM pressure sensor. And I say GM pressure sensor on purpose because recently I had my oil pressure sensor go bad because I was using a cheapo Dorman unit, and I ended up doing way too much to figure out that it was actually just a sensor and the oil pressure was fine. Like many other things, links in the description to that, but I want to make sure I included that in this video. Another problem you'll have running a blower is you'll find everything runs really, really hot. That's just the way blowers work. It's non-intercooled, so that pressure creates hot air, which turns into hot combustion, and it's a vicious cycle that continues. And to break that cycle, you need a really good radiator. This unit here is from Cold Case. It's their performance unit, and I opted for the 2 huge fans that they have available. And this setup here keeps temperatures under 200 in any driving condition. And I found that setup works really great. Now, for any aftermarket ECU, you're gonna need a tune. And I don't care what wizard you run, what file you get off the internet, what you need to do is get a real tune in there for your engine. Those ECUs are expensive, but you have to plan on paying a tuner if you're not gonna do it yourself. But if you are, you definitely can. I think everyone should at least try and learn how to tune a little bit for their own vehicle. I actually did a series about creating your own startup tune, and I have links to that in the description, and it's something very doable. Now, if you address all those problems up front in your build, I guarantee you'll have a much smoother and much more enjoyable experience than I did. Rather than having success and then a problem and a failure, and then success and a problem and a failure, and this vicious cycle that never really seems to stop because it's one thing after another. Please learn from my struggles and my suffering and enjoy your ride. And if you want more information about a specific problem, there's gonna be a ton of links in the description. So full-length videos about most of these issues. Well guys, I say at the end of most of my videos, I really hope this video was helpful to you. And I think this one, out of all my videos, has probably the most value for you. Because you can breeze through this in just a few minutes and get a bunch of solutions to problems that I hope you never have. But if you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and get out there and dive your next project. Catch you next time.